The series begins with Lee Kuk-chul, a wealthy man from a prosperous family. Despite being blind, he possesses remarkable hearing abilities, allowing him to perceive everything around him. This includes when his servants gossip about him or try to deceive him, like serving him leftover food or scheming to steal his valuable possessions. When he catches them, he becomes very angry, tossing food off the table and promptly firing the two waiters. Later, during a meal with his friend Chong Manak, she criticizes him for firing too many maids recently, suggesting it's becoming excessive. The next day, Kuk-chul approaches his lawyer, Oh Chung-dong, asking him to be extra vigilant. He's worried because he'll come of age in a few months and inherit his parents' wealth and belongings. He fears that Manak might try to harm him to gain access to his inheritance. You see, there was a tragic accident in the past that claimed Kuk-chul's parents' lives and left him blind. And who benefited the most from it? Yes, it was Manak, as she could easily acquire all their assets. Meanwhile, a new girl named Cha Jong-moon arrived at Kuk-chul's residence, introducing herself as the new maid. Interestingly, Kuk-chul recognized her voice from a recent argument they had at the mall. When he asked if they had met before, she admitted it, fearing she might lose her job if she lied. After a while, Kuk-chul thought Jong-moon would be a suitable maid, but then he overheard Manak instructing her to spy on him. This made him very angry, leading him to immediately fire Jong-moon. She was confused and annoyed at that moment, stating that Kuk-chul's unhappiness came not from his blindness, but from his negative attitude towards others. As she left, Kuk-chul became so furious that he even threw his coffee table. No one had ever dared to criticize him like that before. In the morning, Kuk-chul gets a call from his company's secretary, Ok Seo-young, informing him that Manak is selling the family hospital. So Kuk-chul quickly contacts Chung-dong to discuss the situation. However, when Chung-dong arrives home, he finds himself already on Manak's side, and he proceeds to confine Kuk-chul to prevent him from interfering with the hospital deal. Nevertheless, Kuk-chul refuses to give up and decides to use his ingenuity. He makes a rope from his blanket, grabs a pair of scissors, and tries to escape through the window. Once outside, he attempts to hitch a ride on the street, but unfortunately, no one stops for him, leaving him feeling frustrated. Suddenly, Jong-moon shows up on her motorcycle. When she sees Kuk-chul, she stops and tells him he won't get a ride just by standing there. Annoyed by her presence, Kuk-chul tells her to go away. However, a moment later, he steps into the road and narrowly avoids being hit by a car. Luckily, Jong-moon comes back to help him. She offers to take him to his family's company office on her motorcycle. Since it's his first time on a bike, Kuk-chul holds onto Jong-moon tightly because he's afraid of falling. Meanwhile, while Manak was finalizing the paperwork to sell the hospital, Kuk-chul bursts into the room with Jong-moon. He loudly declares that the sale agreement is not valid because he didn't agree to it. This makes Manak furious, causing the buyer to cancel the deal and leave. Afterward, Kuk-chul directly confronts Manak, asking if she plans to keep framing him. He mentions overhearing his mother mention Manak's name before her death. This revelation confuses Manak, making her wonder why Kuk-chul suspects her of being involved in his parents' death. Later in her study, Manak is deeply troubled by Kuk-chul's accusation. After receiving information from Seo-young, she discovers that her husband, Bin Il-jae, was the one responsible for Kuk-chul's parents' deaths. Shocked by this revelation, she rushes to Il-jae's study and overhears him discussing on the phone about pushing Kuk-chul's parents' car into a ravine. At that moment, Manak finds it hard to believe her husband's actions. She threatens to reopen the investigation into the accident. However, Il-jae then reveals that he knows about her deceitful actions too, like bribing a doctor to alter Kuk-chul's examination results so his blindness couldn't be cured. Soon after, Manak becomes suspicious of her husband's behavior and asks Seo-young to monitor him. She wants evidence of his meetings with his mistress, Hwon Ji-soo, who happens to be a close friend of Manak. Upon finding damning evidence, Manak confronts her husband and Ji-soo in a rage. She even considers involving the police. However, Ji-soo tries to intervene and unfortunately, in the midst of the argument, Manak is pushed and falls down the stairs, leading to her death. Meanwhile, shocked by what has happened, Il-jae decides to hide his wife's body in the car trunk. He contacts an assassin named Go Jute, who has a long criminal record. Il-jae persuades Jute to lure Kuk-chul to the hospital's pathology lab, planning to frame him for Manak's death. Upon discovering that Jute knows about his parents' death, Kuk-chul quickly rushes to the pathology lab with Jong-moon. When they arrive, Jutae activates a virus, trapping Kukchul and Jong-un inside. Kukchul desperately searches for an antidote, but only finds one dose. Originally planning to give it to Jong-un, she selflessly gives it to Kukchul instead. After a while, Kukchul wakes up in the hospital and finds Il-jae waiting for him. Instead of showing concern, Il-jae accuses Kukchul of hiring an assassin to kill Monarch. Consequently, Kukchul is thrown into jail, unaware that Jutae is imprisoned alongside him. Later, Kukchul learns about a plot to assassinate him, but manages to avoid it. Then an inmate named Park Hae-il, who often faces harassment from Jutae, warns Kukchul that Jutae and others are also planning against him. As a result, Kukchul and Soo-yoon team up to set up Jutae. Following Hae-il's advice, Kukchul stages a situation in the bathroom to make it seem like Jutae is about to attack him. At the same time, Hae-il informs the prison authorities, claiming that Jutae is a threat. Consequently, Jutae is subdued with medication under the suspicion of intending harm to Kukchul. Upon waking up, Jutae is filled with dread at the thought of confronting Kukchul. His condition worsens, fearing he may have caught the virus from the lab in the previous hospital. Desperate, Jutae begs Kukchul for help, knowing that Kukchul is the only one vaccinated against the virus. Touched by Jutae's plea, Kukchul agrees to assist him, but with one condition: he will only help Jutae if Jutae reveals who ordered him to frame Kukchul. At present, Kukchul knows his uncle orchestrated the entire murder attempt. His plan is to seek help from Prosecutor Park, who is handling his case, once he's released from jail and receives treatment at the hospital. He believes Park will conduct a thorough reinvestigation. However, to his dismay, Il-jae bribes Park and convinces him to have Kukchul admitted to a mental hospital instead. Kukchul had overheard their plan earlier, increasing his anxiety about his future. In the dead of night, Chur-young arrives at the hospital to help Kukchul escape. Shortly after, they flee in a car, only to be chased by the police. Eventually, the driver tells Kukchul to get out, and he tries to hail a taxi. Unfortunately, Il-jae recognizes him and pretends to be a cab driver, whisking Kukchul away. Shortly after, Chur-young reaches out to Kukchul, alerting him to his dangerous situation in Il-jae's vehicle. She tracks them down and forces them to stop on a bridge. Feeling desperate, Kukchul attempts a daring escape. As he finds himself cornered at the edge of the bridge, he decides to leap into the river rather than let his uncle capture him. Swearing vengeance, he vows to return and seek justice against Il-jae. The next morning, Kukchul wakes up amidst trash and begins a new life surviving as a beggar. After several years, he encounters a woman at a subway station whom he recognizes as Chur-young, but she denies it and leaves. Later, while performing on the street for money, some street children inform him that thugs destroyed his makeshift cardboard shelter. In a hurry, Kukchul rushes home and stops the thugs from stealing the money he had collected for his eye surgery. Soon after, the police arrive, causing the thugs to flee. Unexpectedly, Chur-young appears and asks for Kukchul's help in developing a vaccine for a virus, as he is the only one vaccinated. In return, she promises to give him a new identity and arrange for him to move to America for further education. Additionally, she pledges to cover the costs of Kukchul's eye surgery and cosmetic procedures and assist him in seeking revenge against Il-jae. After the surgery, Kukchul assumes the new identity of Kung Ki-tan and starts a 5-year study program in America. Meanwhile, Wang Jae-mund, Il-jae's father-in-law, rises to a parliamentary position, and Il-jae himself becomes head of the legal team at Dodo Group, a conglomerate owned by Do Chung. During this time, discontent with his role, Il-jae begins searching for Do Chung's illegitimate son, Do Kun-woo, and secretly guides the young man, planning to manipulate him against Chung. On the other hand, Jong-un, now known as Oh Soo-yeon, strives to secure a position at Dodo Group. At the same time, Ki-tan, accompanied by Chur-young, also applies for the same job and coincidentally meets Soo-yeon. When Ki-tan hears her voice, he mistakenly believes she is Jong-un, unaware of her name change. Soon after, Soo-yeon's friend Kun-woo also refers to her by her new name, adding to the confusion. Later, the three of them take the written exam together, with Soo-yeon seeming to struggle with the questions. In contrast, Kun-woo effortlessly answers every question, having received them beforehand from Il-jae. Meanwhile, utilizing his unique abilities, Ki-tan excels in the test. Eventually, all three of them pass the integrity assessment and move on to the next stage, which involves living together in a dormitory for training before determining who will be accepted into Dodo Company. Upon settling into the dormitory, Takwang, the team leader overseeing the recruitment process, warns them that more than half of the participants will be eliminated. Chung, who greets them via video call, promises a significant cash prize for the top-ranking participant. On the other hand, Ki-tan receives advice from Shir-young, suggesting he opt for the business department as a simpler path to seek revenge. As the rankings are revealed, Kun-woo consistently maintains the lead, benefiting from the test information provided by Il-jae. Consequently, Ki-tan falls behind in second place, while Soo-yeon finds herself at the bottom. Kun-woo takes the chance to mock Soo-yeon about her low ranking. In addition to academic assessments, Dodo Group's recruitment process includes military training and physical fitness evaluations. During this phase, Ki-tan and Kun-woo demonstrate similar physical abilities, while Soo-yeon struggles in this area. Meanwhile, Il-jae identifies Ki-tan as a potential threat to Kun-woo and tries to eliminate him through covert means. One day, Ki-tan comes across a ballpoint pen with a hidden camera inside. Just as he finds it, Il-jae shows up for an inspection, catching Ki-tan with a tape recorder, leading to an interrogation. Surprisingly, Ki-tan remains calm because he receives support from Chung's wife, Ji-yoon, who knows Shir-young. Thanks to Ji-yoon's intervention, Il-jae can't get Ki-tan fired. During the trainees' training sessions, Soo-yeon becomes extremely tired from the physical exercises, resulting in a nosebleed. Later, they're asked to form cooking teams to show their teamwork skills. Ki-tan quickly joins Yoo Sung-mae's team, leaving Soo-yeon without a team. Soon after, the committee invites several participants, including Kun-woo, to join Soo-yeon's team. For the cooking competition, Soo-yeon's team decides to make Chung's favorite dish. On the other hand, Ki-tan's team frustrates him as Sung-mae struggles with cooking, leading to mediocre dishes. Meanwhile, Kun-woo is pleased as his team impresses the judges with their cooking. On the other place, Kun-woo secretly meets with Il-jae, who offers him answers for the upcoming test. However, Kun-woo insists on competing fairly based on his own abilities. Il-jae tries to convince him to maintain his top position if he wants to be recognized as the best participant in the recruitment process. Eventually, Kun-woo agrees and receives the answer sheet, reclaiming the top rank in the next examination. Meanwhile, Soo-yeon experiences a significant improvement in her ranking, moving up 10 positions, which makes her happy. Ki-tan becomes more suspicious of Kun-woo's consistent top ranking, as he seems to put in less effort compared to the other participants while they're in the dormitory. Later, martial arts training begins and Kun-woo easily wins his match, partly because his opponent is infatuated with his good looks. At the same time, Sung-mae wins by defeating her male opponent. However, when it's Ki-tan's turn to face Soo-yeon, they seem evenly matched and engage in a fierce exchange during the match. After the training session, everyone returns to the dormitory. There, Ki-tan overhears Kun-woo's conversation with Il-jae, arranging to meet at a cafe. Upon hearing Il-jae's voice, Ki-tan is surprised and decides to follow Kun-woo. At the cafe, Il-jae shared some insights with Kun-woo about the upcoming recruitment exam, which involved strategies for a patent dispute case at Dodo Company. Unbeknownst to them, Ki-tan was secretly listening to their conversation from the cafe. As time went by, the results of the written exam were revealed, with Kun-woo securing the top spot. Il-jae was about to announce the official results when Takwang intervened, stating that the final results would be delayed until the resolution of the ongoing patent dispute case. Takwang took this step because Ki-tan had informed him the previous day about Il-jae consistently helping Kun-woo cheat during exams. Takwang felt frustrated because despite working for 20 years, he hadn't been promoted, while Il-jae had quickly risen within the company. In the evening, Soo-yeon came across a significant individual in the case on a video, but chose not to share with anyone due to the frequent ridicule she faced from the other participants. Later, she went to the police station to report her discovery. Coincidentally, Ki-tan and Kun-woo also encountered the same person Soo-yeon had found. However, when they examined the individual in the video, the police struggled to identify him due to changes in his appearance and damaged fingerprints. Nonetheless, Ki-tan recognized the voice as belonging to the man in the video. As the trial for the patent dispute case progressed, Kun-woo's strategy seemed ineffective. Before the trial concluded, Ki-tan introduced a crucial witness, but the opposing counsel challenged the witness's credibility. Ki-tan then worked to discredit the evidence obtained from the conversation. Later, Ki-tan persuaded Il-jae to dial the phone number from the conversation, and to their surprise, the opposing counsel's cell phone rang. This revelation exposed the lawyer's dishonest behavior in the trial, leading to Dodo Group winning the case. Ki-tan's significant contribution earned him recognition, and he even got the chance to meet Chung. The next day, Takwon gathered all the recruiters and revealed a new issue affecting Dodo Group regarding the production of counterfeit medications, which had been reported by the media. As a result, the stock prices of Dodo Group and its affiliated companies continued to decline. Earlier, Chung was furious upon receiving certain news, causing him considerable distress. Subsequently, Il-jae informed him that they had identified the main suspect, Michael Chung. After this revelation, Chung instructed Il-jae to contact Takwon and enlist the help of the participants. During the meeting, the participants were assigned the task of gathering intelligence about the location of a counterfeit drug manufacturing facility from Michael, who would be attending a gathering at the consulate in China. During this time, Takwon divided the team into 4 groups, assigning Soo-yeon and Sung-ae the task of blending in as party guests. Unfortunately, Soo-yeon's outfit seemed outdated, prompting Ki-tan to quickly give her a more stylish look. Later, Takwon briefed Soo-yeon and Sung-ae on how to carry out their mission while dancing with Michael. With all the preparations made, including bringing a bug device, Sung-ae tried to engage Michael in a dance to place the bug on his clothing. However, just as she was about to attach the bug, Michael received an urgent call and had to leave. From afar, Takwon closely watched, hoping Soo-yeon would succeed in completing the task. At the party, Michael, attracted to Soo-yeon, approached her and eventually took her to his hotel room. Seeing an opportunity, Soo-yeon accepted the invitation, planning to plant a bug on his clothing. When Michael tried to make advances, she spilled his drink, allowing her to discreetly swap his clothing. Meanwhile, Ki-tan and Kun-woo grew worried when Soo-yeon didn't come out of the hotel room after 30 minutes. They decided to investigate, pretending to be hotel staff. However, when they entered the room, Soo-yeon quickly told them to leave, managing to replace Michael's tie clip with a bug and leave a note before he returned from the bathroom. The next day, during the meeting, Il-jae assigns Soo-yeon's team to proceed with the mission, while the others head back to Korea. Soon after, Soo-yeon receives another message from Michael, prompting Ki-tan and Kun-woo to join her team to monitor her actions. They feel jealous seeing the closeness between Soo-yeon and Michael, and keep constant communication with her through earpieces. However, Soo-yeon becomes annoyed and steps on the earpieces when Michael leaves. Later, Ki-tan and Kun-woo approach Soo-yeon, urging her to complete the mission quickly. But their conversation is interrupted when Michael unexpectedly returns, forcing them to quickly return to their seats. Sensing their suspicious behavior, Michael moves closer. To divert Michael's attention, Ki-tan feels compelled to kiss Kun-woo, causing them to get distracted from their original intentions. Unfortunately, they lose sight of Michael and Soo-yeon, resulting in mutual blame for the failure. Shortly after, Michael invites Ki-tan to play cards again, intrigued by his previous defeat. On the other hand, Kun-woo, eager to impress Chung, contacts Michael and exposes Ki-tan and Soo-yeon as spies from Dodo Group, attempting to uncover his counterfeit drug operation. Meanwhile, unaware of her compromised identity, Soo-yeon continues to enjoy her time with Michael. In the evening, Ki-tan met with Michael for a game of cards, but after drinking champagne, he unexpectedly passed out. When he woke up, he found himself tied to a chair with a lie detector nearby. Meanwhile, Soo-yeon tried to defend herself after her true identity was revealed and was brought to the room where Ki-tan was held captive. During this time, Michael ordered someone to administer a truth serum to force Ki-tan to reveal everything. Despite the pressure, Ki-tan resisted and managed to explain that he had been forced into the mission against his will. After being released, Ki-tan confronted Kun-woo, expressing his frustration about Kun-woo's pursuit of personal success at the expense of the team. Seeing their argument, Sung-ae tried to intervene to calm things down, but Ki-tan chose to leave in frustration. On the other hand, Kun-woo ran into Michael and casually mentioned his interest in obtaining counterfeit drugs from Michael's factory. Later, Michael agreed to take him to the factory to fulfill his request. Feeling confident about his relationship with Michael, Kun-woo also informed Ki-tan and Il-jae about the plan. Upon reaching the location, Michael set a trap and quickly ordered his men to capture Il-jae and Kun-woo. He warned against harming Ki-tan, mentioning that Ki-tan had previously revealed sensitive information about Il-jae's involvement in his parents' death while under the influence of drugs. Additionally, Ki-tan expressed resentment towards Dodo Group and showed interest in collaborating with Michael. Later, Ki-tan decided to join forces with Michael in selling counterfeit drugs. After Ki-tan left, Michael's servant advised him not to trust Ki-tan too quickly. Thus, Michael contemplated ways to confirm Ki-tan's loyalty. During a meeting with Il-jae, Ki-tan sensed that Michael might be monitoring them. Therefore, Ki-tan was careful not to say anything suspicious. Over time, Michael began to believe that Ki-tan was on his side. Eventually, Michael took Ki-tan to a ship where counterfeit drugs were being produced and distributed. Seeing an opportunity, Ktan quickly informed Su-yeon about the location of the fake drug factory and urged her to call the police. The plan worked, and Michael's associates couldn't intervene. Meanwhile, holding a firearm, Ktan urged Michael to leave immediately, stating that he didn't consider Michael as the true mastermind behind the counterfeit drug operation. Despite Ktan's insistence, Michael seemed annoyed, but promised to return before making his escape. During this time, Ktan's achievements brought great satisfaction to Chung, leading him to personally contact Ktan to fulfill his promise of rewarding him as the top contestant. Additionally, Chung began assigning more tasks to Ktan. However, Il-jae and Kun-woo grew frustrated by Ktan's repeated success, which they hadn't anticipated. Meanwhile, aboard the airplane, Chung's daughter, Do Sin-young, was enjoying relaxation while her maids attended to her toenails. Suddenly, turbulence caused one of the maids to accidentally smudge the toenail polish, sparking Sin-young's anger. Consequently, she mistreated the maids due to the mishap. On the other hand, Ktan, assigned with fetching Sin-young on behalf of Chung, received crucial information from Seo-young. She informed him of Sin-young's reputation for arrogance and mistreatment of others. Armed with this knowledge, Ktan rushed to the airport for the pickup. However, upon their meeting, Sin-young displayed disdain towards him, triggering memories of his own past when he used to mistreat his maids. Despite the threat of being fired if he made a mistake in front of Sin-young, Ktan remained unfazed by the consequences. He promptly escorted her to a salon for grooming. However, Sin-young interpreted Ktan's actions as an effort to control her, leading her to contact Chung with the intention of having him fired. To everyone's surprise, Chung intervened and instructed his daughter to obey all of Ktan's commands. Ktan then took her to the VIP room of the salon, leaving Sin-young with no choice but to follow his instructions. Meanwhile, in the VIP dressing room, Su-yeon noticed some clothes that caught her eye. At the same time, Sin-young entered and looked down on Su-yeon, who was trying on a dress in front of the mirror. Despite Su-yeon's attempts to explain, Sin-young seemed disinterested, much to Su-yeon's frustration. Eventually, Su-yeon, in a moment of anger, grabbed Sin-young's hair and disrupted her appearance, warning her against belittling others before storming out of the room. Shortly after, Ktan entered the room and was surprised to see Sin-young's disordered appearance. He wondered aloud if she was seeking revenge against the person who had messed up her appearance. After Sin-young's makeup session, Ktan accompanied her home to meet her parents, who were planning to introduce her to a potential suitor they had arranged. However, upon reaching home, Sin-young, opposed to the arrangement, unexpectedly grabbed Ktan's arm and announced him as her boyfriend. Confusion ensued, with Ktan signaling to Chung that Sin-young's claim was untrue. Quickly, Sin-young whisked Ktan away from the scene. Meanwhile, Ji-yoon, displeased with her daughter's actions, apologized to a young man named Su-yoon. Surprisingly, Su-yoon's interest in Sin-young increased, despite her earlier behavior. In private, Ktan felt annoyed when Sin-young unexpectedly held his hand. As Sin-young's parents approached, he promptly embraced her, giving the impression that her behavior was just a facade to deter her parents from introducing her to the suitor they had selected. The next day, the office staff warmly greeted the boss's daughter upon her arrival. Sin-young recognized Su-yeon and called her into the room, unaware of Sin-young's identity. Su-yeon apologized and offered Sin-young the opportunity for revenge for the previous incident. However, Sin-young declined and insisted on firing Su-yeon. In response, Su-yeon pleaded not to be dismissed, explaining that she needed to support her ailing younger brother, who was hospitalized. Meanwhile, Ktan, also present in the room, reflected on his past experiences and urged Sin-young not to terminate Su-yeon's employment, warning that it could damage her reputation. After considering this, Sin-young had a change of heart and decided not to fire Su-yeon. On another matter, Chung's eldest son, Do Kwon-woo, held the CEO position in one of the companies within the Dodo Group. He amassed wealth and used it to bribe politicians for his gambling activities. Meanwhile, an employee at the T9 chemical factory, which was part of the Dodo Group under Kwon-woo's supervision, tragically lost his life in an explosion caused by a gas leak. After the incident, Park So, he informed the media that the explosion was caused by exposure to T9, a dangerous carcinogenic chemical. However, her claims were met with doubt at the time. Meanwhile, in Kwon-woo's office, he received a research report indicating that individuals exposed to T9 for over 10 years had a 20% higher risk of developing cancer. Despite the alarming findings, he ignored the report and continued to promote various products, including kitchenware and clothing, containing these harmful substances. A few days later, Sogi held a press conference to expose the Dodo Group's use of the hazardous substance T9, which led to a rise in cancer cases among long-term users of their products. Meanwhile, during a board meeting, Kwon Woo tried to shift blame by arguing that the increase in cancer cases was due to the patients' weakened immune systems rather than their products. After the meeting, a close friend of Kwon Woo suggested he hold a press conference to counter the negative media reports about his company. Soti's press conference had brought more attention to their organization, making Kwon Woo nervous about hosting one himself. Seeing Kwon Woo's troubled state from a distance, Il-jae couldn't help but feel satisfied. On the other hand, Ki-tan couldn't sit idly by after hearing about Soti's press conference. He decided to delve into the matter and arranged a dinner with Kwon Woo at an upscale restaurant. During the meal, Ki-tan casually pointed out that all the utensils used in the restaurant were their company's products. Kwon Woo was shocked by this revelation and pushed his food aside. Seeing Kwon Woo's reaction, Ki-tan became more convinced that the reports about harmful substances in their products were true, strengthening his resolve to uncover the truth. When Ki-tan met with Chae-young, she confirmed that Kwon Woo had made billions by selling products containing T9 without concern for potential harm to consumers. Meanwhile, the worker injured at the factory eventually succumbed to his injuries. The attending physician contacted Kwon Woo, who urged the doctor to prevent the victim's family from conducting an autopsy. He feared that if the autopsy results were revealed, it could be disastrous for his company. Following Kwon Woo's orders, the hospital discreetly moved the body without informing the family. When the family arrived at the hospital, they were informed of the victim's death and offered a substantial settlement and compensation package. Initially angered, the family became silent upon seeing the generous compensation provided by the company. Meanwhile, Ki-tan and Sung-nae embarked on a mission to infiltrate a location where Kwon Woo was involved in an illegal T9 business deal. Knowing that Sung-nae lacked proficiency in seduction, Ki-tan employed various tactics to approach Young Dong-yi, the head of the establishment. Unfortunately, all their attempts were unsuccessful. However, when Sung-nae intervened to protect a woman from harassment, Dong-yi took notice of her and invited her to her room. While Sung-nae conversed with Dong-yi, Ki-tan disguised himself as a maid and prepared a drink spiked with sleeping pills, causing Dong-yi to eventually fall unconscious. Together, they searched Dong-yi's quarters and found a safe containing documents related to T9 products. Later, Il-jae became curious about Ki-tan's true identity and attempted to inquire directly. Ki-tan, hesitant to reveal his true self, redirected the conversation and presented evidence of the harmful use of T9. This revelation surprised Il-jae and increased his trust in Ki-tan as a confidant. As a sign of friendship, Il-jae invited Ki-tan for a meal and gifted him a luxurious watch. However, once the meeting ended, Ki-tan, harboring resentment toward Il-jae, promptly destroyed the watch. As the public and media scrutiny intensifies due to the increase in cancer cases linked to Dodo Group's T9 products, certain prosecutors moved to apprehend Kwon Woo, causing him to panic. In response, he instructs his subordinates to trap the prosecutors in an elevator to delay them and eliminate all evidence related to T9. Just as Kwon Woo finishes disposing of the evidence, the prosecutors arrive, and he pretends to be unaware of any wrongdoing. The next day, while still traveling with Ki-tan, Dong-yi begins to suspect irregularities in the T9 case investigation. Realizing that only Il-jae could reveal the truth, Dong-yi orders his men to detain and interrogate Il-jae. Dong-yi and Ki-tan head to the location where Il-jae is being held. Shortly after, Dong-yi pressures Ki-tan to kill Il-jae, but Ki-tan, unwilling to jeopardize his plan that had earned Dong-yi's trust, pretends to stab Il-jae with the knife provided by Dong-yi. Secretly, he informs Il-jae that the police will arrive soon. When the authorities apprehend Dong-yi's associates, Il-jae finally obtains crucial evidence to implicate Kwon Woo. Thankful for Ki-tan's help, Il-jae expresses his gratitude. While en route to the prosecutor's office, Kwon Woo, accompanied by Soo-yeon acting as his bodyguard, seized the opportunity to embrace her in the car. Despite Kwon Woo being the driver, he was unable to intervene. Upon their arrival at the prosecutor's office, Kwon Woo faced the media, proclaiming his innocence and expressing his readiness to forfeit his wealth if found guilty by the court. As the trial for the T9 case began, the crucial evidence provided by Il-jae was unexpectedly destroyed by an unidentified individual. Despite this setback, Kwon Woo remained relatively composed. However, when Soo-yeon testified as a witness, revealing the company's misconduct, including the use of hazardous T9 leading to cancer, Kwon Woo received a 6-year prison sentence. Meanwhile, Chung, watching the trial broadcast from home, collapsed upon hearing the judge's verdict. As Kwon Woo exited the courtroom in prison attire, he faced the anger of furious citizens who pelted him with eggs. Unfortunately, he showed no remorse for his actions, further fueling public hostility towards him. After the case, all company products were recalled from the market, resulting in a significant drop in Dodo Group's stock price. While in prison, Kwon Woo instructed his associates to keep tabs on Soo-yeon, planning revenge upon his release. In contrast, Su-yeon, now a whistleblower, stepped down from her position and assumed a regular staff role. She faced mockery from colleagues for exposing company secrets and tarnishing its reputation. Eventually, Ji-yoon visited Su-yeon in her office and terminated her employment due to her actions. Feeling deserted, Ki-tan tried to comfort and support her. On another occasion, Ki-tan, now a trusted confidant of Il-jae, received an invitation to visit Il-jae's secret headquarters. There he discovered that Il-jae's team controlled software used to manipulate Dodo Group's stock prices, enabling him to buy shares at low rates. Il-jae also revealed that he invested 50 billion, obtained from selling Ki-tan's family hospital to acquire these shares, aiming to take control of the company. To thwart Il-jae's plans, Ki-tan anonymously contacted Chung, revealing Il-jae's scheme to take over Dodo Group. He provided a recording of his conversation with Il-jae, exposing how Il-jae's actions led to the decline in share prices. Upon learning this information, Chung promptly orders an undercover investigation into Il-jae. Additionally, he instructs his associates to locate his illegitimate son, Kun-woo, as he is unwilling to lose another son following Kwang-woo's imprisonment. Shortly after, Tak-won, who had been investigating Chung's illegitimate son, informs him that Kun-woo has been close to Chung all along and recently secured a position within the company. Tak-won warns Chung to stay cautious, as Kun-woo was mentored by Il-jae, who is suspected of plotting against Dodo Group. Despite this, Chung remains hopeful that he can win Kun-woo's loyalty and turn him against Il-jae. Later, Kun-woo arranges a meeting with Chung, where Chung finally acknowledges Kun-woo as his son, deeply moving Kun-woo. Soon after, Ki-tan contacts Chung, requesting a meeting at a church to discuss Il-jae's schemes regarding Dodo Group. Following the call, Chung invites Kun-woo to join in for dinner. During the church meeting, Ki-tan presents a video exposing Il-jae's corrupt activities within Dodo Group. However, Chung insists that Ki-tan reveal his identity before they can collaborate. In response, Ki-tan complies and discloses his identity to the Dodo Group leadership. Later, Chung-dong informs Il-jae that the contract for storing Ki-tan's parents' ashes is about to expire. Il-jae decides not to renew the contract, a conversation overheard by Ki-tan. Quickly, Ki-tan rushes to the storage site for his parents' ashes, only to find that they have been disposed of, along with a photograph of his parents. This devastating discovery leaves Ki-tan feeling like he has lost his parents all over again. Filled with anger, Ki-tan swears to seek a painful revenge on Il-jae. One night, he spots Il-jae in the parking lot and tries to attack him with an iron pipe. Luckily, Seo-young intervenes and manages to calm him down, preventing him from acting on impulse. A few days later, Chung-dong helps Il-jae set up 30 anonymous accounts to buy shares of Dodo Group. Meanwhile, Seo-young assists Ki-tan in creating 30 anonymous accounts to counter Il-jae's plan. On another occasion, before Chung-dong could deliver the anonymous accounts to Il-jae's cover team, Ki-tan and Chung-dong go to a restaurant. There, Ki-tan orchestrates a situation where a waiter accidentally spills water on Chung-dong, causing him to excuse himself to the restroom. While Chung-dong is occupied, Ki-tan swaps the accounts provided by Chung-dong with those prepared by Seo-young. Thankfully, the plan unfolds smoothly, and Il-jae's secret team unknowingly transfers funds to Ki-tan's accounts. The next day, when Il-jae's team checked the anonymous accounts again, they were puzzled to discover that none of the transferred funds had reached their intended destinations. Meanwhile, Ki-tan and Chung had agreed to start the share purchase at 9 a.m., leaving Il-jae in a panic as the funds for acquiring Dodo Group shares had mysteriously vanished. Desperate for answers, he begged Ki-tan, who was present, to contact Chung-dong. Despite their attempts, they couldn't reach Chung-dong via phone, deepening Il-jae's suspicion that Chung-dong had betrayed him. Unbeknownst to Il-jae, Chung-dong had been kidnapped by Ki-tan's associates to take the blame for the missing funds. Feeling trapped, Il-jae sought help from Jae-mun for funds. However, Jae-mun's contacts had been swayed by Chung's bribes, making him unable to assist Il-jae. With no other options, Il-jae had to resort to using his personal funds. Meanwhile, knowing about the unfolding events, Ki-tan quickly contacted Seo-young to plan an accident to harm both Il-jae and himself after Il-jae used his personal funds. This was their strategy to sabotage Il-jae's attempt to buy Dodo Group shares. Despite Seo-young's reluctance upon hearing the plan, Ki-tan remained determined in his quest for revenge against Il-jae. Later, Seo-young and her assistant, Cho-woo, were inside a truck, preparing to crash into Ki-tan's car. However, when they reached an intersection, Cheryun couldn't bring herself to harm Ki-tan, so she swerved the truck away. Determined not to let his plan fail, Ki-tan deliberately crashed his car into a road divider, injuring himself to make it seem like Il-jae was incapacitated. Afterwards, Cheryun and Cho-woo quickly took the money Il-jae had withdrawn, called for an ambulance, and left the scene. Meanwhile, Dodo Group emerged victorious in the stock market. The next day, Il-jae woke up in the hospital and asked about the stock market results. Jisoo informed him of the massive loss of 300 billion, leaving Il-jae deeply frustrated. Shortly after, Jisoo approached Ki-tan to ask why the plan had failed. Ki-tan explained that Chung-dong had betrayed Il-jae by altering the anonymous account, with Chung-dong still under close surveillance. Following Ki-tan's accident, Chung visited him and suggested firing Il-jae while offering Ki-tan a promotion. However, Ki-tan proposed that Chung step down instead to avoid suspicion. Though Chung seemed intrigued by the conflict between Ki-tan and Il-jae, he respected Ki-tan's decision to remain silent on the matter. Back at the hospital, Soo-yeon, who had lost her job, worried about her brother Kayun's medical bills. However, she was surprised to find out from the nurse that someone had already taken care of all the expenses. Initially, Soo-yeon thought it was Yam Hyun-koo, the lawyer who had handled the Dodo Group case before. However, it turned out to be Ki-tan who had asked Hyun-koo to cover the bills, relieving Soo-yeon of the financial burden. Later, since Ki-tan was also receiving treatment at the hospital, Soo-yeon decided to visit him. Coincidentally, Kun-woo, who was also there, noticed their closeness and felt jealous. He then approached Il-jae and warned him to be cautious of Ki-tan, adding to Il-jae's uncertainty about whom to trust. A few days later, as Ki-tan was getting ready to leave the hospital, he wanted to say goodbye to Kai-yoon. However, when he saw a necklace belonging to Kai-yoon, it reminded him of Jong-un, making him suspect that Soo-yeon might actually be Jong-un. Consequently, Ki-tan called Soo-yeon to arrange a meeting, but Kun-woo, who was with her, abruptly ended the call, prompting Ki-tan to call back repeatedly while mentioning Jong-un's name. To Ki-tan's surprise, Il-jae overheard him mentioning Jong-un's name and mistakenly assumed it was his girlfriend's name. Despite Ki-tan's attempts to explain, Il-jae grew more suspicious, feeling like he had heard the name before. Upon leaving the hospital, Cheryun warned Ki-tan against getting too close to Soo-yeon, fearing potential risks. However, Ki-tan ignored the warning and waited patiently for Soo-yeon at a bus stop until she boarded the bus. Meanwhile, Kun-woo, who saw them together, followed the bus they were on. After getting off the bus, Ki-tan confessed his feelings to Soo-yeon. However, she explained that she couldn't reciprocate his love due to concerns about her sick younger brother burdening him. Despite their mutual feelings, Soo-yeon decided to let him go because of their difficult circumstances. They parted ways, both feeling saddened by the situation. Meanwhile, Il-jae couldn't shake off his obsession with the name Jong-un that Ki-tan mentioned. Remembering a girl named Jong-un with connections to Kuk-chol, Il-jae started suspecting that Ki-tan might be Kuk-chol. Shortly after their conversation, Il-jae promptly contacted Jae-mund, urging him to warn his family about Ki-tan and devised a plan to confirm Ki-tan's true identity through a blood sample. Coincidentally, Ki-tan overheard this discussion while accompanying Jae-mund to the office and remembered providing a blood sample at the hospital. Reacting quickly, he contacted Cheryun after parting ways with Jae-mund. Ki-tan then asked Cheryun to go to the hospital and swap his blood sample. While Cheryun distracted Jisoo at the hospital, Cho-woo exchanged Ki-tan's blood sample with another person's. Fortunately, the plan worked, and the test results confirmed that Ki-tan was not Kuk-chol, much to Il-jae's relief. Consequently, Il-jae invited Ki-tan for coffee, now assured that Ki-tan posed no threat to him. Meanwhile, the corrupt council member Jae-mund was enjoying himself at a party after orchestrating the purchase and sale of substandard military equipment, leading to numerous military mishaps. At that moment, Ki-tan, who had been investigating him, finally gathered evidence by secretly recording Jae-mund at the party. Shortly afterward, Chung persuades Kun-woo to expose all of Jae-mund's corrupt activities. After careful consideration, Kun-woo decides to align himself with Chung and presents all the evidence to the court, revealing Jae-mund's wrongdoings. Upon discovering that Kun-woo was the informant, Jae-mund becomes increasingly agitated, unable to conceal his misdeeds any longer, especially with the damning recording against him. Meanwhile, Il-jae, fully cognizant of the situation, struggles to comprehend how the young man he had mentored could betray him. Frustrated and realizing that without Jae-mund's support, his plans to take control of the Dodo Group become more challenging, Il-jae's mental state deteriorates, leading to his confinement in a mental hospital, where he lashes out at Jisoo when she attempts to offer solace. The next day, Chung-dong manages to escape from captivity and contacts Il-jae using a payphone, unaware that Il-jae is pretending to be insane. During the call, Chung-dong implicates Ki-tan as the source of their troubles, unknowingly providing information that Il-jae had previously shared with Jisoo about his feigned mental illness to facilitate an easier investigation into Ki-tan. After conducting an investigation, Chun-dong uncovers Ki-tan's true identity as Kuk-chol. Subsequently, Il-jae instructs Chun-dong to surveil Ki-tan until he becomes aware of being followed. Sensing the surveillance, Ki-tan strategically uses his cell phone to record the person tailing him, identifying Chun-dong. In response, Ki-tan heads straight to the mental hospital to confront Il-jae, disguising himself as Kuk-chol and addressing him as uncle. Il-jae continues his pretense by offering toys to Ki-tan during their encounter. Assertively, Ki-tan assures Il-jae that even in his supposed state of madness, he won't allow him to succeed. Meanwhile, Chul-young receives troubling news from Chul-woo about the theft of a vaccine designed by Dae-sung, its original creator. Without the design, their superior, Jo Kir-young, threatens to harm them. Seeking Ki-tan's help, they plead with him to assist in recovering the missing vaccine blueprint. During their conversation, they detail Dae-sung's background as a former vaccine development professor, struggling with a gambling addiction. Under financial pressure, Dae-sung stole the vaccine design intending to sell it at a high price. Recognizing the urgency, Ki-tan agrees to aid Chul-young in resolving the issue. The following day, Ki-tan puts his plan into action and schedules a meeting with Dae-sung to repurchase the vaccine design at a significant cost. Unfortunately, Kun-woo uncovers Ki-tan's scheme and tries to sabotage it. He contacts Dae-sung, exposing Ki-tan's collaboration with Chul-young. Upon learning of this collaboration, Dae-sung postpones finalizing the sale and purchase agreement. On another occasion, Ki-tan enjoys drinks with his colleagues, unaware that Kun-woo's associates have spiked their beverages with sleeping pills. Soon, they all fall unconscious without knowing why. While Ki-tan is incapacitated, one of Kun-woo's men seizes the opportunity to gather his fingerprints, planning to frame him as an industrial spy. Meanwhile, Il-jae concocts a plan to eliminate Dae-sung and frame Ki-tan, aiming to secure the valuable vaccine for profit. He orders Chun-dong to carry out Dae-sung's execution and plant Ki-tan's fingerprints as evidence, leaving Ki-tan unconscious beside Dae-sung's body. In the hospital, Kae-yoon informs Soo-yeon that Ki-tan is actually Kuk-chol. However, when she tries to contact him, Ki-tan remains unresponsive as he is still unconscious. Soo-yeon decides to visit him in person instead. Upon waking up, Ki-tan is shocked to find Dae-sung injured and covered in blood in the room. Shortly after, guards enter and discover Ki-tan with a tool used in the assault on Dae-sung, making him a suspect in the attack. Despite his explanations, Dae-sung tragically passes away from his injuries, leading to Ki-tan's arrest as the main suspect. Outside, Soo-yeon is surprised to see Ki-tan in handcuffs. Kun-woo appears and accuses Ki-tan of murder, but Soo-yeon refuses to believe it. Ki-tan strongly denies the accusation as he is escorted by the police, with Soo-yeon urging him to remain hopeful. Meanwhile, Il-jae continues his efforts to further destroy Ki-tan's life. He meets with Kwon-woo and falsely implicates Ki-tan in his imprisonment, hoping to spark conflict between Ki-tan and Kwon-woo in jail. As planned, Ki-tan ends up sharing a cell with Kwon-woo, who starts to harass him. Several days later, Il-jae pretends to visit Ki-tan in prison to provoke him. He falsely accuses Kwon-woo of being responsible for the deaths of Ki-tan's parents, hoping to goad Ki-tan into seeking revenge. However, Ki-tan is cautious about resorting to violence in prison, knowing it could lead to a life sentence, so he decides to find another way to seek justice. At night, Ki-tan strikes a deal with Kwon-woo, offering him the vaccine blueprint in return for his help in escaping from prison. Surprisingly, Kwon-woo trusts Ki-tan. Meanwhile, it's revealed that Hyun-koo, previously thought to be only a lawyer, is actually the head of the Korean intelligence service. He instructs Sung-hae, a member of his team, to orchestrate Ki-tan's prison break and retrieve the vaccine design. As part of their strategy, Sung-hae induces food poisoning in Ki-tan, leading to his transfer to the hospital. However, during the transfer, Sung-hae intercepts the ambulance and abducts Ki-tan. Upon waking up, Ki-tan is astonished to discover that Sung-hae is an undercover operative of the intelligence service. She presses him for information about the vaccine design, but Ki-tan truthfully explains that he no longer has it, as Il-jae has taken it. Sadly, Sung-hae remains doubtful. Meanwhile, Kir-young, who is Chul-young's superior, orders her to bring Ki-tan before him for questioning regarding the vaccine design. Reluctantly, Chul-young follows her boss's orders and kidnaps Ki-tan and Sung-hae, taking them to meet Kir-young. Despite Ki-tan's repeated claims of ignorance about the vaccine's whereabouts, Kir-young grows increasingly frustrated and orders Chul-young to torture Ki-tan. Reluctantly, she complies and Ki-tan visibly suffers from the pain. Witnessing Ki-tan's resilience, Kir-young begins to develop a level of respect for him. On another occasion, Ki-tan and Sung-ai attempt to escape. When Kir-young learns of this, he recognizes Ki-tan's tenacity and offers him a position within his organization. He instructs Kir-young to find Ki-tan. When she informs Cho-woo of this, he becomes agitated, feeling overlooked despite his years of service to Kir-young compared to Ki-tan, whom he has only known for a short time. Frustrated, Cho-woo devises a plan to eliminate Kir-young and steal the vaccine designed to flee with Kir-young, whom he has developed feelings for. However, Kir-young does not reciprocate Cho-woo's affections and promptly informs Ki-tan of the scheme. They decide to leave together and start afresh outside of Korea. Shortly afterward, Kir-young confesses her feelings to Ki-tan, but he declines her offer, choosing to spare her feelings. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Kye-yoon, despite his mental challenges, possesses remarkable photographic memory skills. Recognizing his talent, Hyun-koo and Soo-yeon seek his assistance in examining the intricate vaccine design, which proves difficult to replicate. With Kye-yoon's help, they manage to create a drawing of the vaccine design, which Soo-yeon captures in a photo to send to Ki-tan, who remains in hiding after escaping from prison. Shortly after, Kye-yoon whimsically folds the paper containing the vaccine design into a paper airplane and begins flying it around. During this time, Chum-dong and Il-jae, who are present at the hospital, come across him. Concerned about this sensitive information falling into the wrong hands, they take drastic measures and administer a drug to Kye-yoon, leading to his heart failure. Meanwhile, Soo-yeon mourns the loss of her younger brother, deeply devastated by the tragedy. In contrast, Il-jae feels a sense of satisfaction, viewing Kye-yoon's death as a means to lure Ki-tan out of hiding. Feeling responsible for Kye-yoon's death, Ki-tan finds himself trapped in hiding, unable to confront the situation. Some time later, Ki-tan arranges a meeting with Kir-young and requests her assistance in arranging a meeting with Kir-young to hand over the vaccine design he obtained. Unbeknownst to Ki-tan, during the meeting, Kir-young and Cho-woo devise a plan to eliminate Kir-young and seize the design for themselves. However, as Cho-woo attempts to execute the plan by firing a shot, Ki-tan hears the gunshot and instinctively shields Kir-young, sustaining a gunshot wound to his head in the process. It turns out that Cho-woo had a backup plan to detonate Kir-young's car, but Kir-young intervenes, unwilling to sacrifice Ki-tan. She drops the remote detonator and urges Kir-young to move away from the vehicle. Then, she shoots Cho-woo, and thanks to her quick actions and warning, both Ki-tan and Kir-young survive the explosion. In the aftermath, Kir-young directs his team to falsely announce that Ki-tan and Sung-ae died in the explosion. Meanwhile, he ensures that skilled medical professionals attend to Ki-tan's head injury, though the prognosis remains uncertain. Nonetheless, Kir-young is committed to exhausting all options to save Ki-tan's life. Elsewhere, news of Ki-tan's reported death spreads, leading Il-jae to seek confirmation from Kir-young. Upon receiving confirmation of Ki-tan's alleged demise, Il-jae appears satisfied, thinking he no longer has to deal with Ki-tan. At Kir-young's residence, the doctor delivers the news that Ki-tan is in a coma. Subsequently, Kir-young decides to transfer Ki-tan to China for better medical treatment. So-min also promises to care for Ki-tan until he wakes up. Meanwhile, grieving the loss of her younger brother, Soo-yeon resolves to retake the bar exam with the intention of one day confronting Il-jae. After a year of dedicated effort, Soo-yeon successfully establishes her own law firm. On the other hand, Ki-tan emerges from his coma, but struggles with persistent head pain and fragmented memories of his past. To aid his recovery, Kir-young arranges for Ki-tan to undergo hypnotherapy with Professor Chan. In an unexpected twist, Kir-young meets with the professor in secret and asks for all memories of Soo-yeon to be erased from Ki-tan's mind during the therapy sessions. After the sessions, Ki-tan's condition improves, and he thanks Kir-young for his support. Kir-young then offers to adopt Ki-tan, which Ki-tan happily accepts, affectionately calling him his father. They formalize the adoption, and Ki-tan gains newfound confidence with his newfound family support to confront Il-jae. Meanwhile, after being released from prison, Kwon-woo fires Tak-won from his job. Determined to recover, Tak-won invests his savings into opening a fried chicken restaurant. Unfortunately, the business fails, leaving him in debt. To make matters worse, Kwon-woo mocks him, fueling Tak-won's thirst for revenge. Similarly, Lee Soo-tak, also let go from the same company, opens a tavern where he frequently meets Tak-won, who is struggling with similar challenges. Upon returning to Korea, Ki-tan learns about Tak-won and Soo-tuk's difficulties and invites them to collaborate in defeating Il-jae. Chul-young is tasked with conveying Ki-tan's proposal to Tak-won and Soo-tuk. Eventually, they all gather at Ki-tan's home, enjoying a variety of dishes while awaiting his arrival. When Ki-tan joins them, he offers financial support to Tak-won to help him clear his debts and get back on track. Meanwhile, Il-jae is focused on his campaign for Seoul's mayoral position. Unexpectedly, Ki-tan confronts him, delivering a shocking prediction of Il-jae's impending downfall. This sudden appearance unsettles Il-jae, especially given Ki-tan's prolonged absence before delivering the ominous message. Later, Sung-nae alerts Ki-tan to Chul-young's suspicious actions, leading to her phone being tapped. It's uncovered that Chul-young had a conversation with Il-jae, causing Ki-tan to overhear their discussion. Fueled by anger at what seems like a betrayal, Ki-tan orders Chul-young's arrest and insists on her punishment according to the organization's rules for traitors. Shortly after, Ki-tan decides to personally oversee Chul-young's supposed execution. He instructs everyone else to stay outside the room while he talks with her. However, Chul-young surprises him by confessing her feelings for him, which leads Ki-tan to spare her life since she expresses a desire to support him. Ki-tan stages her execution by firing a gunshot, fooling everyone into believing she's been killed. Upon leaving the room, Ki-tan entrusts Chul-young's well-being to Tak-won, who is aware of the plan. The next day, Chul-young takes on the role of Ki-tan's undercover informant, pretending to be loyal to Il-jae. She informs them that Ki-tan's group is pursuing her. Meanwhile, as Ki-tan watches the news, he sees Soo-yeon's attempts to seek revenge on Il-jae, aiming to ruin his mayoral ambitions in Seoul. Despite feeling a sense of familiarity upon seeing her, Ki-tan's memories remain vague, causing him discomfort. As a result, those around him choose to keep Soo-yeon's secrets hidden. However, after Soo-yeon appears on television, Ki-tan decides to work with her to expose Il-jae's scandal through the same program, marking an unexpected turn of events. As time went by, just when Il-jae was feeling confident about his chances of becoming mayor of Seoul, Ki-tan suddenly exposes a scandal from years ago, revealing Il-jae's affair with Ji-soo. Ki-tan questions whether someone with Il-jae's history of misconduct is suitable for the role of mayor. After the revelation, Il-jae tries to meet Kohan, but he's stopped by the guards, and Tak-won informs him that Ki-tan now holds considerable influence and is not easily reachable. Disheartened by this news, Il-jae returns home frustrated. Unexpectedly, Il-jae appoints Soo-yeon, who previously opposed him, as his legal advisor, allowing her to work closely with him. Kun-woo, aware of this development, becomes furious and warns Il-jae not to harm her. Despite the warning, Il-jae and his associates violently attack Kun-woo. After Il-jae leaves, Soo-yeon, overhearing the altercation, rushes to help Kun-woo and embraces him. Interestingly, Ki-tan witnesses this encounter and feels unexpectedly jealous. On another occasion, Kun-woo sees Ki-tan leading a company during a collaborative signing for a ship contract with a Chinese company. He's surprised because he thought Ki-tan was reported dead. During the event, Kun-woo notices that Ki-tan doesn't seem to remember Soo-yeon, so he asks Soo-tuk about it. Later that night, Kun-woo visits Soo-yeon out of concern about potentially losing her after Ki-tan's unexpected return. The next day, Soo-yeon spotted someone who looked remarkably like Ki-tan. Despite her attempts to catch up with him, she couldn't, so she waited in the rain at that spot. As night fell, Ki-tan returned to the street and was surprised to find Soo-yeon standing there alone in the rain. Just as Ki-tan was about to leave, he noticed Soo-yeon fainting, prompting him to rush to her aid. Upon reaching the hospital, he called Kun-woo, assuming Soo-yeon was his romantic partner. When Soo-yeon regained consciousness, she saw Kun-woo waiting for her, but she realized it was actually Ki-tan who had helped her. The following day, Kun-woo saw Soo-yeon distributing flyers about Ki-tan, leading him to arrange a meeting between them. When Soo-yeon saw Ki-tan alive, she was overjoyed and embraced him, but he suddenly withdrew, failing to recognize her. Memories flooded back, causing him a headache. Shortly after, Tak-won entered the room and quickly took Ki-tan for emergency treatment from Chan. Then, Soo-tuk finally revealed Ki-tan's condition to Soo-yeon. After checking on Ki-tan, Chan met Soo-yeon and explained that his hypnosis therapy had gone wrong due to Ki-tan's deep affection for her. Each memory of her caused him distress. Therefore, the only solution to relieve his suffering was to erase all memories of her. At that moment, Soo-yeon, not wanting Ki-tan to suffer, agreed and tearfully bid him farewell with a kiss. When Ki-tan woke up from the therapy, he couldn't remember Soo-yeon's identity. Nonetheless, she smiled happily, seeing signs of his improvement. On the other hand, with Il-jae's popularity declining due to the scandal of his extramarital affairs, he resorted to staging fake attacks by thugs. He positioned himself as a hero, gaining more public support through deceit. However, a genuine mercenary attacked Jisoo, causing her injuries. Il-jae exploited this incident to generate sympathy, inviting the media and falsely claiming that his wife needed urgent surgery, despite Jisoo's injuries being minor. His dramatic performance stirred public compassion, yet he remained unsatisfied, expressing his desire for certainty in securing the mayoral position. Chae-young proposed a solution to Il-jae, suggesting that he seek support from other candidates to pressure them into withdrawing from the race. Il-jae agreed, unaware that Chae-young secretly informed Takwon about evidence incriminating Il-jae in mayoral election bribery. Ki-tan instructed Takwon to eliminate all evidence once Il-jae assumed office. Later, Kwon-woo alerted Il-jae to Soo-yeon's investigation into his undisclosed funds. Fearing exposure of his corrupt practices, Il-jae ordered Chung-dong to get rid of Soo-yeon. Shortly after, Soo-yeon was abducted, and by chance, Kun-woo witnessed the abduction and followed the vehicle transporting her. Meanwhile, Chae-young overheard Il-jae ordering his men to get rid of Soo-yeon, leading her to inform Ki-tan. Upon hearing this, Ki-tan hurried to locate Soo-yeon. However, Chung-dong had already thrown Soo-yeon into the river, but Kun-woo rescued her shortly after. When Ki-tan arrived at the scene, he found Kun-woo providing first aid to Soo-yeon by the river. Fortunately, she was unharmed, bringing relief and happiness to Kun-woo. On the other hand, Ki-tan realized that if Il-jae discovered Soo-yeon was alive, he would continue to pursue her. Therefore, he advised Soo-yeon to stay in China temporarily for her safety. Kun-woo agreed, seeing it as the most secure option. To mislead Il-jae, they spread rumors that Soo-yeon had disappeared. Meanwhile, at Il-jae's home, he returned intoxicated after celebrating what he thought was his victory over Soo-yeon. Jisoo noticed lipstick marks on his shirt and questioned Chae-young about them, suspecting her husband of being alone with his secretary. However, Chae-young dismissed her inquiries. On another occasion, Jae-mund caught Il-jae embracing Chae-young. Furious with his son-in-law, Jae-mund couldn't take action due to Il-jae's upcoming mayoral candidacy, which would benefit Jae-mund's political ambitions. Therefore, he pretended to be unaware of Il-jae's affair with Chae-young. On the day of the election, as expected, Il-jae won the position of mayor of Seoul, and Ki-tan surprisingly appeared to congratulate him. However, the celebration didn't last long as prosecutors arrived and arrested Il-jae on charges related to electoral misconduct and other crimes. In a hushed message, Ki-tan hinted that this was just the beginning of the game Il-jae was about to face. At the police station, Il-jae was shocked to see Soo-yeon standing before him, someone he believed to be dead. Overwhelmed by his mounting legal troubles, he tried to seek help from Jae-mund, who initially refused. However, after persistent persuasion from Jisoo, Jae-mund relented and ordered an investigation into Chae-young, who raised suspicions. Subsequently, evidence emerged suggesting that Chae-young was a spy planted by Ki-tan to monitor Il-jae's activities. Despite the arrest, Il-jae's situation hardly changed as he had bribed senior police officials. Consequently, he was released from custody pending further investigation after dinner. On another occasion, Jae-mund confronts Il-jae with evidence indicating that Chae-young is working as a spy for Ki-tan. Upon learning this, Il-jae devises a plan to trick Chae-young by giving her false information about intending to harm a witness in his trial. Upon receiving this information, Chae-young promptly informs Ki-tan, who decides to protect the witness. While Ki-tan is busy rescuing the witness, Il-jae sends his associates to intimidate the witness's family, warning them not to speak the truth under the threat of harm. At the same time, Jae-mund confines Chae-young to a mental rehabilitation center and restrains her to prevent her from testifying at Il-jae's trial. This plan allows Il-jae to secure a victory in his initial trial. Amidst these events, Ki-tan becomes increasingly worried about Chae-young's safety as he fails to contact her. Consequently, he visits Il-jae and falsely claims victory in the trial, expressing thanks to Chae-young for her help in deceiving him. After Il-jae leaves, Chae-young manages to free herself, and uses a bracelet given to her by Tak Wong to help Ki-tan locate her. Later during the second phase of Il-jae's trial, just when it seems he might succeed again, Ki-tan arrives with Chae-young, whom he has rescued. Chae-young testifies in court, supported by footage from Kun-woo's car camera, showing the abduction of Soo-yeon by Il-jae's associates. With the evidence and testimonies gathered, the judge finds Il-jae guilty and sentences him to 5 years in prison. Over time, Ki-tan, disguised as a prison guard, approached Il-jae, cautioning him that prison life would become his worst nightmare. Despite sharing the same cell, Il-jae maintained an arrogant demeanor, refusing to dine with fellow inmates and always prioritizing himself during meals. When other prisoners objected, Chung-dong, also in the cell, defended Il-jae by resorting to violence against those who disobeyed his rules. The next day, Kun-woo visited Il-jae in prison, revealing evidence of additional crimes that could ruin his life. Kun-woo proposed to buy Il-jae's company at a discounted price to prevent the exposure of this evidence. Frustrated by the offer, Il-jae unleashed his anger by assaulting his cellmate without provocation. During Chung-dong's temporary absence from the cell due to prison duties, Il-jae found himself alone. Seizing the opportunity, his fellow inmates, angered by his previous behavior, physically attacked him. Later, during a visit from Jisoo and Jae-mund appeared visibly dismayed to see his son-in-law's battered state, realizing his powerlessness in prison. This realization prompted Jae-mund to reconsider his support for Il-jae. Later, Kun-woo returns to Il-jae to revisit their previous discussion about selling his company. However, Il-jae staunchly refuses to entertain the idea of selling. Despite Il-jae's resistance, Kun-woo remains composed and predicts confidently that Il-jae will eventually agree, even as they share coffee. Despite Il-jae's efforts to stand firm, he eventually loses consciousness, and Kun-woo swiftly takes advantage of the situation by placing Il-jae's fingerprints as a sign of the company's sale. Meanwhile, at Ki-tan's residence, he receives the news that his company has secured the licensing rights for the MK2 vaccine in both Korea and America. With this development, Ki-tan decides to sell the vaccine at half its wholesale price, aiming to quickly bankrupt Il-jae's company. On the other hand, Il-jae is already aware of Ki-tan's acquisition of the vaccine license. He sends a message to Ki-tan, informing him that Kun-woo has taken control of his company, rendering Ki-tan's efforts to undermine him futile. Il-jae also informs Kun-woo about Ki-tan's acquisition of the vaccine license. However, Kun-woo becomes irritated upon learning this and arranges a meeting with Ki-tan. Later, Ki-tan visits Kun-woo's office and notices a photo of Kun-woo with Soo-yeon. He questions Tak Wong about Soo-yeon's relationship with Kun-woo, but before Tak Wong can respond, Kun-woo enters and grabs the photo from Ki-tan's hand. Kun-woo then reveals his intention to marry Soo-yeon soon and warns Ki-tan not to interfere. During the night, Kun-woo deliberately allowed himself to be attacked by some thugs who were targeting Soo-yeon, hoping to win her sympathy and affection. Meanwhile, Ki-tan was back at his home, still reflecting on the photograph he had seen of Soo-yeon. Soo-tuk eventually revealed that Soo-yeon's younger brother had greatly assisted Ki-tan in the past, but had tragically been killed by Il-jae. Soo-yeon had also supported Ki-tan in seeking revenge against Il-jae. Although Soo-tuk hinted at certain aspects of Soo-yeon's past, he didn't disclose that Ki-tan and she had been romantically involved. Consumed by guilt, Ki-tan visited the place where Kai-yoon's ashes were kept and noticed a photograph of Kai-yoon wearing a necklace identical to his own. This heightened Ki-tan's suspicions that his relationship with Soo-yeon in the past had been more than just friendship. On the other hand, Kun-woo, injured from the altercation, was taken to the hospital by Soo-yeon, which brought him joy as it indicated her concern for him, the woman he had feelings for. However, upon Soo-yeon's departure, she unintentionally left her phone in Kun-woo's hospital room. Shortly after, Ki-tan tried to contact her, but Kun-woo intercepted the call and asserted to Ki-tan that he wouldn't allow him to have Soo-yeon, despite Ki-tan recalling their past together. Upon hearing Kun-woo's words, Ki-tan felt deeply troubled. Shortly after, Tak Wong entered and informed Ki-tan that Kun-woo had been hospitalized after an assault by gangsters suspected to be linked with Il-jae, further raising Ki-tan's suspicions about Il-jae's involvement in such reckless acts. Feeling the urge to uncover the truth behind the assault, Ki-tan confronted Il-jae. However, Il-jae shifted blame onto Kun-woo, claiming it was Kun-woo's scheme, not his own. After being released from prison, Ki-tan visited the hospital to check on matters and inadvertently witnessed Kun-woo and Soo-yeon sharing a kiss on the hospital rooftop. Witnessing this scene deeply hurt Ki-tan, prompting him to decide to uncover the details of his past relationship with Soo-yeon. The next day, he approached Soo-yeon to inquire about Soo-yeon's connection to him. During their conversation, Soo-yeon revealed that Soo-yeon had consistently supported and assisted Ki-tan, even during his imprisonment resulting from Il-jae's actions. It became apparent that Soo-yeon had remained loyal to him, despite the tragic consequences suffered by Ki-yoon, while aiding Ki-tan in his struggle against Il-jae. After speaking with Soo-yeon, Ki-tan contemplated meeting Soo-yeon, but Tak-won intervened. Tak-won advised Ki-tan against getting involved in romantic matters until they had sought revenge on Il-jae, emphasizing the importance of prioritizing their vendetta. Considering Tak-won's advice, Ki-tan resolved to focus on resolving the issue with Il-jae before pursuing personal relationships. On the other hand, Kun-woo, without Ki-tan's knowledge, extends an offer to collaborate with Il-jae to undermine Ki-tan's efforts. Together, they covertly eliminate all evidence of their illegal activities, keeping Soo-yeon unaware. As a result, the lack of incriminating evidence presented by the prosecution leads to Il-jae's exoneration in court. After the trial, Ki-tan confides in Soo-yeon, expressing his determination to take matters into his own hands if legal justice fails to hold Il-jae accountable. Meanwhile, Chung receives a devastating diagnosis of dementia and paralysis, indicating Kun-woo's father has less than 6 months to live. Capitalizing on his father's condition, Kun-woo uses it to garner sympathy from Soo-yeon and proposes to her. Surprisingly, she accepts his proposal, agreeing to become his fiancée. Following this, Kun-woo sets out to find an individual with a matching inscription to Chung's, aiming to secure his father's entire estate. At the same time, Ki-tan forwards evidence of Il-jae and Soo-yeon's affair to Ji-soo. Confronted with the proof, Ji-soo confronts Il-jae and delivers a resounding slap. Despite his anger, Il-jae remains silent as Ji-soo decides to end their relationship. In Chung's deteriorating state due to dementia, he arranges a family gathering to determine who genuinely cares for him. He realizes that Sin-young is the only one truly concerned about his well-being. While his wife and other sons argue over his wealth, Sin-young consistently advocates for urgent medical attention for him. In the midst of the chaos, Chung gathers all his family members and decides to undergo surgery promptly. Unfortunately, he suffers a cardiac arrest during the operation and passes away. Strangely, his body disappears afterward. Sin-young suggests reporting this to the authorities, but Kun-woo objects, fearing it might negatively impact Dodo Group's stocks. With no other option, the family proceeds with Chung's funeral to secure their inheritance. However, they are shocked to learn that Chung will leave all his assets to Kun-woo. Ji-yoon and Kwon-woo are furious upon hearing this, leading to Kwon-woo assaulting Kun-woo during the dispute over inheritance. On a different occasion, Soo-yeon comes across Kun-woo's cell phone and accidentally reads a message from Il-jae, hinting that Chung is still alive and hidden. Upon discovering this revelation, Soo-yeon follows Kun-woo to a villa where Chung is being held captive. There, she overhears Kun-woo admitting to forging the will. Upon returning to the office, Soo-yeon carefully scrutinized the will and found evidence of its forgery. She immediately confronted Kun-woo, urging him to confess at the upcoming family gathering. However, Kun-woo destroyed all the evidence she presented after she left. During the family meeting, to everyone's surprise, Soo-yeon revealed that Chung was still alive. Despite knowing about Kun-woo's fake will, Chung chose not to address it, showing compassion for Kun-woo's mother, whom he had previously expelled. Later that night, feeling disappointed by Kun-woo's refusal to admit the truth, Soo-yeon decided to end their engagement and break up with him, despite his pleas and apologies. On another occasion, during a televised program, Soo-yeon offered a substantial reward for evidence implicating Il-jae in the alleged murder of Ki-tan's parents. Feeling trapped, Il-jae tried to harm Soo-yeon, but Kun-woo protected her and got shot by Il-jae in the process. Shortly afterward, Soo-yeon rushed to Kun-woo's side as he lay wounded. He expressed satisfaction at protecting her before he passed away. Meanwhile, authorities finally captured Il-jae and gathered enough evidence to sentence him to death for his past crimes. With Il-jae's case resolved, Soo-yeon decided to leave the country. 2 years later, Ki-tan asked Tak-won to take on the role of CEO of the Dodo Group, which now belonged to him. Ktan, suffering from a head injury caused by a previous gunshot, lost his sight, and Soo-yeon assumed control of his criminal organization. Currently, Ktan lives a life reminiscent of his youth when he was blind. One day, Soo-yeon returned to Korea and secretly became Ktan's caretaker. As the climax approaches, Ktan prepares for surgery to address his head injury. Just before entering the operating room, he reveals that he knew all along that Soo-yeon had been serving as his maid. Upon hearing this, Soo-yeon smiles and expresses her hope for his recovery. So the moral of the story is don't mess with family gatherings, or you might end up accidentally resurrecting someone and uncovering a whole bunch of family secrets.